Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going, and as I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. Hunter Biden is guilty. And there was no doubt about the jury verdict. It came in quickly and clearly. Now, what does it all mean? Well, the first thing I think we have to point out is that the justice system in this country isn't perfect, but it certainly works. And for those who claim there's a double standard of justice, let me point out that Hunter Biden is the president's son and is a Democrat and was found guilty. And that's it. 3 charges. And he was guilty on all. So I was fascinated by the response of the Republicans, and I was particularly interested in Elise Stefanik, once a moderate Republican, now a dyed-in-the-world Trumpist, and clearly a candidate prospectively for the vice presidency of the United States if Donald Trump wants to take a woman on the ticket. Yesterday, she spoke about what happened and referred to the Biden crime family. Now remember please, Elise Stefanik is the number 3 Republican in the House of Representatives. Let's also remember that Hunter Biden was not charged with a crime relative to his family, only in relation to guns. Let's point out that what Elise Stefanik did was to, in a sense, mix things up. She's saying, okay, he may be guilty on this, but really what he's guilty of is being part of the Biden crime family. Let me point out that James Comer, who is the chairman of the House committee that has been investigating the Bidens now for a very long time, have come up with absolutely nothing to make the charge that the Biden family is a crime family reality. It simply has not happened. This, to me, is very important. There is another facet of this that I think is critical. Donald Trump, it turns out, possesses 3 guns, even though he is a convicted felon. Hunter Biden had 1 gun. And I want to ask you a very simple question. What is the Republican Party going to do about guns? Any minute now, or any day now, the Supreme Court of the United States will issue a ruling on guns. And let me tell you, part of the whole question of Hunter Biden's appeal will depend on the Republicans. Do they believe that a convicted felon ought to be able to have a gun? It's a good question. And that is why the Republican Party is today tied up in knots. If they are going to condemn Hunter Biden as a convicted felon for having a gun, what are they going to say about Donald Trump, a convicted felon who has 3 guns? This is something to think about. And the Republican Party will have to clarify, won't they? Let me just say about Hunter Biden, those of you who've listened to me over the years, whether on this podcast or on KGO, know that I have always said that the sins of the children should not be blamed on the parents. Clearly, what Hunter Biden did was wrong. Clearly, what Hunter Biden has suffered is horrific. Clearly, being an addict and, frankly, subjecting your family to such a difficult situation is not pleasant. But it's also clear that Hunter Biden has been clean, according to what we are told, for some years now. And I have to tell you, he should pay the penalty, whatever the penalty is. But that penalty should not be placed on Joe Biden. Joe Biden didn't have anything to do with his son's addiction, nor his son's purchase of a gun, nor the disposal of that gun. It simply doesn't ring right. And so the Republican Party will have to confront a question, because if, in fact, as the NRA maintains, every American should be able to possess a gun, And if the Republican Party embraces that, then what do they say about Hunter Biden's conviction? You know, if the Supreme Court rules the right way, Hunter Biden may not have to suffer the consequences of that conviction. Time will tell, but it's an important point. I want to say a quick word about another reality. I was watching yesterday on Fox while Paul Ryan, the former Speaker of the House, the former Republican nominee for Vice President of the United States in 2012, with Mitt Romney as the candidate for president, and I listened to him very carefully. Ryan is a true conservative. Oh, yes, I guess if you wanted to define him as a rhino Republican, he would accept that title. But he made clear he's not voting for Biden, but he will not vote for Donald Trump. And interesting, isn't it? In 2012, the Republican National Convention met and acclaimed Mitt Romney for president and Paul Ryan for vice president, and neither one of them will support Donald Trump for president. You know, Paul Ryan said he's going to write somebody else in, a conservative Republican. Hey, Paul, maybe you ought to write yourself in. You and I understand very clearly that the Republican Party is no longer the Republican Party of old. I remind you of what Donald Trump Jr. said on the Ellipse on January 6th. He said, "This is no longer the Republican Party. It is the party of Donald Trump." And that's the problem. I also last night heard as much of the Sam Alito tapes as I could. I was horrified, and every American ought to be. If he had given testimony like that before the Senate committee confirming him, he would not have been confirmed. But I also listened to the Chief Justice, John Roberts, who was clear and precise and unambiguous. He made clear to point out that America is not a Christian nation. He mentioned friends who were Jews and Muslims. What John Roberts did was to take the position, whether I agree with him or not on certain issues, of elevating the Supreme Court. And I wish that Sam Alito and Clarence Thomas would do the same thing. We have a lot to think about this morning. I should also point out quickly that Secretary Blinken says that Hamas is asking for amendments to the agreement which he had hoped to reach between, all those involved in the Hamas hostage crisis. And you will note, Hamas has not signed on, and I'm going to suggest to you in the strongest possible terms, Hamas has only one goal, the destruction of Israel. And that is certainly not consistent with either American policy nor our aspirations for peace in the Middle East. We have a lot to talk about. We'll continue to do it right here on Around the Political World with John Rothman. Thanks for tuning into another episode of this podcast, and I want to be clear. Make sure to follow along. Let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. And please do share an episode with a friend or colleague so we can grow and expand. You can interact with me on Facebook and LinkedIn. And my special appreciation to the wonderful producer of this podcast, Gogo Zoger, who makes sure that Around the Political World with John Rothman is up and running each and every day. See you tomorrow.